The world is a mysterious place, and as we understand one mystery, it seems others only become more confusing. Most mysteries are creepy simply because the unknown is inherently eerie, but some are outright scary. These are 5 scary mysteries from around the world. Number 5. For about a month in 2016, residents of a small town in Forest Grove, Oregon, were plagued by a strange, high-pitched whistling sound. The unexplained noise resembled a train screeching to a stop or a violin being played into a microphone with severe audio feedback. It was almost always only heard at night and sent pets crazy. At first, residents worried it may have been a warning siren announcing a gas leak. Others believed it may have been caused by a faulty water valve. Neither explained why it was only heard at night and wasn't consistent, but it seemed like a reasonable explanation. However, gas and water companies soon denied that there was any issue in the area. Recordings of the noise made worldwide news. Everything from the paranormal to an alarm to, of course, aliens was suggested, and local police were quickly inundated by calls from people believing they'd solved the mystery. Of course, this wasn't the first strange noise to come from the Portland area. About 2 years earlier, residents reported a strange radio station that broadcast creepy music, the shepherd's tone, and Morse code messages. While odd, the station turned out to be nothing sinister at all. The station was to be a new typical station, but it needed to be broadcasting for 2 weeks before it was set to go live. The station decided to have some fun in that time by playing the creepy audio loops. This strange screeching obviously didn't have the same explanation. After almost a month, the noise showed no signs of stopping, and residents grew more frustrated. Police were eventually forced to step in and warned that if this was being done purposefully, it was illegal. Not long after, as suddenly as it had started, the noise stopped and it hasn't been heard since. It's possibly just a coincidence that the noise stopped after the police warning, but for many that seemed too unlikely, meaning the noise had to have been created intentionally. If so, whoever the culprit was and why they were making the noise remains a mystery, one that's unlikely to be solved. Number 4. Australia has only had one unsolved civil aviation disappearance since World War II. In 1981, a 6-seater aircraft called the VH-MDX disappeared over New South Wales. The plane was being piloted by Mike Hutchins, an experienced pilot with thousands of hours worth of experience flying commercial planes. He also had 28 hours logged for this particular style of plane he would be piloting on August 9, 1981. His passengers were a group of 4 friends who had chartered the plane for a flight back home after a holiday. The plane should have been capable of easily making the flight, even if its design wasn't necessarily the best suited to the icy conditions it would face. The first leg of the flight went without any issue, and they landed as scheduled at Coolangatta Airport to refuel. The second leg would not be so simple. Hutchins took off at 5:01 p.m. to set off towards Bankstown Airport in Sydney. Low cloud was also expected as it was below freezing temperatures between 4,000 and 7,000 feet above sea level. This would be an issue, with the possibility of ice forming a big concern, but Hutchins continued regardless. About 2 hours into the flight, as he and air traffic control discussed the possibility of switching to a more direct flight path, Hutchins reported he was getting considerable turbulence and a lot of downdraft. 5 minutes later, he informed air traffic control that he was in a cloud and requested clearance to climb to 10,000 feet. He then reported that his primary flight instruments had failed. He was now flying blind. It didn't take long for search and rescue to locate the plane on radar. It was off course by 40 kilometers and was near Barrington Tops, a mountainous area, to the Gondwana rainforests. Air traffic control tried to guide Hutchins over the radio, but Hutchins reported he was having trouble climbing to 8,500 feet. At 5:37 p.m., he cleared the cloud and was in the clear skies, but the panic wasn't over just yet. Ice had accumulated on the wings, and they were descending rapidly. He managed to recover for a moment, saying over the radio, up and down like a yo-yo. In the final message, a panicked-sounding Hutchins said he was at 5,000 feet. Radar contact was lost around the same time. A 10-day search and rescue operation got underway, but there was no sign of the plane or any wreckage. Since 1981, countless expeditions have been sent to try to find the plane. Satellite and drone technology have also been put to use to no avail. Number 3. The story of Sarah Jo, a Boston whaler, began on the 11th of February, 1979. 5 friends planned a short fishing trip off the coast of the Hawaiian island of Maui. None were particularly experienced sailors, but they were all strong and healthy young men and had experience in the water. The 5 men set out near midday. Just a few hours later, a storm rolled in. Weather was worse than many on the island had ever seen. Some in larger ships reported their vessels going completely vertical in the 80-foot waves. But despite the terrible conditions, the family of the missing crew tried to search the coastline for their loved ones, but visibility was almost non-existent. Once the storm had died down, the Coast Guard searched for 5 days, but when there was no sign of the ship after that, the official search was called off. Locals resumed the search, but most came to the conclusion the Sarah Jo had sunk with all hands on board. Most believed the mystery had been solved, and soon enough it was forgotten about. That is, until 1988. John Nofton was a National Marine Fisheries researcher. On September 10th, he was working doing research on an atoll in the northern part of the Marshall Islands. While visiting the atoll, he spotted a small battered boat that appeared to have washed ashore. Nofton had been part of the initial search, and even though almost 10 years had passed, his first thought was the Sarah Jo. The boat was so badly damaged, only part of the registration could be determined, but a swift investigation confirmed Nofton's initial suspicions were correct. Nofton and his team of researchers searched the rest of the atoll for any clues as to what might have happened. Near the boat, they found a shallow grave marked with a cross made from driftwood. Excavation of the grave found it contained just one body, now nothing more than a skeleton. Resting atop the skeleton was about 3 inches of notebook paper separated by sheets of tinfoil. There were no other remains or signs of life on the atoll. The bones were later identified as belonging to Scott Mormon, though there was no information on when he may have been buried. However, Nofton wasn't the first person to have visited the atoll since Sarah Jo's disappearance. It was calculated the ship would only have taken a few months to drift from where it had disappeared to the atoll. But when another research team landed there 4 years before Nofton, there was no sign of the grave. The Sarah Jo had to be somewhere else between 1979 and 1984, but we have no idea where or what happened to the rest of the crew. Number 2. The Nylon String mystery is one of the most bizarre mysteries on this list, and possibly the creepiest. In the early 1990s, residents near the Kono-Kishinden railway station in Higashiyosaka City noticed hundreds of pieces of nylon string were being tied to telephone poles and railings. While a little weird, it wasn't particularly scary, although the fact nobody seemed to ever see anyone tying the strings could be a little unsettling. The mystery attracted more attention when it was submitted to the Detective Night Scoop, a television show that was popular in the 80s and 90s and featured celebrities attempting to solve mysteries submitted by fans. The show took the mystery as seriously as any other, sending a comedian to investigate the case. He soon realized the strings were tied to form some sort of trail and began to follow it. He followed it back to a gas station where thousands of pieces of string were found tied to wires and poles. The investigation ended with no conclusion, though they were able to determine someone had been buying all the nylon string in the area for this project. At the end of the show, the comedian detective announced the investigation was discontinued, and a message appeared on the screen stating the show wouldn't handle any information about the topic in the future. This was the first and only time the show had flat out stopped investigating a case. According to locals, the string disappeared as the mystery grew famous. To date, it's still not known for sure who was behind the weird phenomenon, but it's believed to have been an elderly homeless woman with a mental illness. Night Scoop also has not confirmed why the investigation was stopped. If they discovered the culprit and stopped the investigation for their privacy, it would have made sense not to broadcast the feature, especially as it would be mocking the mentally ill woman. As it is, the mystery continues to baffle those that stumble across it. Number 1. For 50 years, the mystery surrounding the disappearance of the stardust captured imaginations. It was the MH370 of the second half of the 20th century. On August 2, 1947, a flight from Buenos Aires to Santiago disappeared somewhere over the Andes Mountains. For decades, no wreckage was found, allowing theories to run wild. Hijackings by German war criminals, stolen gold, and aliens were all suggested. The plane's passengers were also put under scrutiny. Apparently, aboard the flight was a businessman with diamonds stitched into his suit and a British diplomatic courier carrying diplomatic secrets. Whatever the truth of the passengers' backgrounds, what was known was that all 11 people on board the Stardust had vanished. In 2000, some of the mysteries could be put to rest. The wreckage was discovered by climbers in the Andes Mountains, and an investigation began. The investigation found the cause of the crash was likely weather-related. A story was pieced together, one that didn't involve aliens. In the clouds, there was zero visibility. The crew believed they'd already cleared the mountains when they began to descend. The disaster, while tragic, could be explained. But more than 70 years later, one mystery still remains. At 5:41 p.m., 4 minutes before they were due to arrive at Santiago, Chilean radio operators received a message in Morse code from the plane. The message came through loud and clear, but was very fast and didn't make much sense. STNDEC. The operator asked the aircraft to clarify, having no idea what this was supposed to mean. The aircraft repeated STNDEC twice, suggesting this was not an error, and did in fact have a meaning. Contact was lost after this point, making this the last known message from anyone on board. Many have pointed out that STENDEC is an anagram for descent, though it makes no sense for a pilot to send an anagram rather than just descent, especially as the operator clearly didn't understand. Others have suggested it was an acronym for Severe Turbulence Encountered, Now Descending Emergency Crash Landing. The meaning remains a mystery, but if solved, could tell a different story to what we already know about the fate of the Stardust. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.